What are you doing here? We're waiting for Dr. Ellis. The woman's voice cracked on the last syllable. Her son sat frozen in the chair beside her, a stuffed animal crushed against his chest with one small hand. His eyes were locked on something none of us could see. 8 months without a single word. 8 months of specialists and therapists and desperate phone calls. And all of it led here, to this room, to me. I closed the door behind me, smoothed my coat, met her stare. I am Dr. Ellis. Her face went white, but that moment was still 3 months away. And to understand how I ended up standing in front of the woman who tried to destroy me, holding the only key to saving her son, you need to know who I am. Not who they thought I was, who I actually am. My name is Naomi Ellis, and I grew up on a porch in Memphis, Tennessee without a voice. Ma Ruth's porch. My grandmother sat in her rocking chair like it was a throne, sweet tea sweating in her hand, watching the sun melt behind the oaks. 81 years old and sharper than anyone half her age. Baby girl, she looked at me over her glasses. You fly back to New York tomorrow and you still sitting here looking like you lost something. Just thinking, Mama. She rocked, thinking about how you got all them degrees and all that money and still come home looking like a little girl who needs her grandmama. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Ruth Ellis had a gift for cutting straight to the bone with a voice like warm honey. She raised me after Mama couldn't, after the addiction took everything Mama had and left me. A silent little girl on this same porch. Selective mutism, the doctors called it. I called it being trapped inside my own body with no way out. I didn't speak a single word until I was 6 years old. Mama Ruth never pushed, never forced. She sat with me every single day. She waited. And one afternoon, right there in the garden, I looked up and said her name. That silence shaped everything I became. I built my whole life around it. Went to Vanderbilt, top of my class, PhD from Columbia, published 2 books on childhood trauma recovery that changed how the field thinks about kids who can't speak, opened a clinic in New York City, 18-month waiting list. Families flew from Seoul, from London, from Dubai because I understood something other specialists didn't. I understood what it felt like to have words locked inside you, to be the child that everyone talked about but never talked to, because I was that child once. The world knew me as Dr. N. Ellis, but back here on Mama Ruth's porch, I was just Naomi, the girl who found her voice late and spent her whole life helping other children find theirs. Auntie Jackie's car pulled up, bass thumping. She rolled down the window. Naomi, girl, you better eat before you fly back. I made gumbo and I will not be disrespected. Cousin Tasha leaned out the passenger side. She means it. She already called your mama to complain. My family. Loud, loving, Memphis to the bone. They didn't care about my waitlist or my degrees. They cared that I ate. I flew back to New York the next morning, carrying Tupperware full of gumbo and cornbread, and the kind of love that stays warm through a 3-hour flight. The Children's Hospital was quiet that Tuesday afternoon. I was doing a consult, working with a 7-year-old boy named Marcus, who hadn't spoken since his parents' divorce. The room was small, carpeted, filled with soft light and toys I'd chosen specifically for him. I sat cross-legged on the floor. Marcus sat across from me, building something with blocks. I didn't speak, didn't push. I just sat with him, hands open, face calm, letting the silence be safe. Marcus placed a blue block on top of a red one. Looked at me. I smiled. He placed another. This was the work. Not flashy, not fast, just presence, just patience. The world saw Dr. Ellis, the published expert. But the work was this: a woman on a floor, waiting for a child to feel safe enough to try. That's a good tower, Marcus. He almost smiled. I felt someone watching. A prickle on the back of my neck, that awareness you get when eyes land on you and stay. I looked up. He was standing in the doorway. Scrubs, stethoscope draped over his neck. Korean, late 20s, with the kind of face that made you look twice and then pretend you didn't. Dark eyes, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite name. Not curiosity, something warmer. He realized I'd caught him, had the decency to look embarrassed. Sorry, he stepped back. I was just Staring? I kept my voice low. Marcus was still building, his cheeks flushed. Observing, professionally. I gave him the look Mama Ruth gives when she knows you're lying. You observe all the consultants from the doorway? Or am I special? He laughed, quiet, so he wouldn't disturb Marcus, but real. The kind of laugh that changes the shape of someone's face entirely. Yoon Shi-woo. He extended his hand. Pediatric nurse, 3rd floor. Naomi. I shook it. His grip was warm. He held on half a second longer than necessary. So did I. You always lurk in doorways? Only when someone sits on the floor with a kid for 45 minutes without saying a word? His expression shifted. Genuine now. Most specialists come in talking, explaining, performing. You just sat there. Kids don't need a performance. They need safety. Something crossed his face. Recognition, maybe. Like I'd said something he'd been thinking for years, but never heard out loud. Yeah, he nodded. They do. Marcus placed another block. The tower wobbled. Shi-woo and I both held our breath. It steadied. Marcus looked at me again, and this time he did smile. Shi-woo watched, and when I glanced up at him, he was looking at me the way people look at sunsets. Like he'd stumbled into something he wasn't ready for, but couldn't look away from. I filed that away. The warmth in his eyes, the way his voice went soft when he talked about kids, the fact that he noticed what I was doing on that floor. My phone buzzed that evening. Unknown number. So I asked around and got your number from the nurse's station. I know that's borderline creepy. I grinned into the phone. It's fully creepy. Fair. Let me make it up to you. Coffee? I know a place near the hospital that doesn't taste like it was brewed in 1987. Is this a date or a coffee review? It's whatever you want it to be, Naomi. The way he said my name. Like he was tasting it, deciding he liked it. Fine. But if the coffee is bad, I'm blaming you. Deal. I hung up, still grinning. Standing in my clinic, surrounded by degrees and published research and 18 months of families waiting for me, and grinning at my phone like I was 16 again on Mama Ruth's porch. That was Tuesday. By Sunday, I was standing in his mother's dining room. The table was set for 12. White linen, crystal, silver chopsticks. The Yoon family home was a showcase. Everything polished. Everything in its place. Shi-woo had warned me his family was traditional. He'd squeezed my hand in the car. Just be yourself, that's all I need. His mother entered the room like she owned the air in it. Mrs. Yoon. Mid-50s, immaculate, with the kind of posture that communicates superiority before a single word is spoken. She looked at me, looked at Shi-woo, looked back at me. So, her smile was porcelain, perfect and cold. This is the girlfriend. Not my name, not nice to meet you. The girlfriend. Shi-woo tensed beside me. Iyama, this is Naomi. Naomi, my mother, Mrs. Yoon. Naomi. She repeated it like she was trying to figure out where to file it. Somewhere low, clearly. Shi-woo tells me you work with children. I do. How practical. The word landed. I felt it. That specific sharpness disguised as politeness that certain people have mastered. The art of the insult, wearing a smile. His father sat at the head of the table. Mr. Yoon. He didn't greet me, didn't look up from his phone. His silence said everything his wife's words did. His older brother, Dr. Yoon Si-hyun, the surgeon, shook my hand with a grip that was technically polite and emotionally nothing. So you're the one Shi-woo's been hiding. He glanced at his brother. He's always had, simpler tastes. Across the table, Yoonbi, the sister-in-law, looked me up and down with the efficiency of someone appraising furniture. Mrs. Yoon turned to her husband and switched to Korean. The table shifted. A private conversation happening in public. Smiles aimed at me between sentences I wasn't supposed to understand. I caught the tone. Dismissive. Amused. Like I was a curiosity that would pass. Shi-woo's jaw tightened. Iyama, English please. Oh, Mrs. Yoon waved her hand. Nothing important, dear. It was important. We both knew it. I picked up my chopsticks, ate the food, smiled when addressed, let my grandmother's voice settle in my chest like armor. Never let them see you bleed, baby. They can't hurt what they can't reach. Mrs. Yoon didn't know my name was on 2 published books. Didn't know families begged to get on my waitlist. Didn't know that I'd been silent once too. And that silence had become the most powerful thing about me. She looked at me and saw nothing worth keeping. She had no idea what she was looking at. The coffee was good. I told him so. Told you. Shiwoo grinned across the table, both hands wrapped around his cup like it was something precious. Best kept secret within 3 blocks of the hospital. And the company? Jury's still out. I laughed. Couldn't help it. The cafe was small, tucked between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. The kind of place you'd walk past 100 times and never notice. He'd noticed. That said something about him. We'd been sitting for an hour. The conversation hadn't stopped. Not the polite kind where you feel silence because you're afraid of it, but the real kind, where one story spills into the next and you forget to check the time. He told me about his first week as a pediatric nurse, a 4-year-old boy with leukemia who wouldn't let anyone near him until Shiwoo sat on the edge of his bed and read him a comic book for 45 minutes straight. I didn't know what I was doing, he said, stirring his coffee. But he fell asleep holding my hand, and I thought, okay, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. I understood that, more than he knew. Your family doesn't see it that way, I said. Not a question. His smile faded. My brother saves lives with a scalpel. In my family's eyes, that's medicine. What I do is something else. What you do is hold a child's hand when they're scared. That's not something else. That's everything. He looked at me. Really looked. Like I'd handed him something he'd been waiting for someone to give him. About last Sunday. He set his cup down. My mother, the things she said. That's not... It's fine. It's not fine, Naomi. No. I met his eyes. It's not. But I've survived worse than a cold dinner table, and I'm still sitting here, with you. He reached across the table. His fingers found mine, warm, steady. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. That night, I called Mama Ruth from my apartment. She picked up on the first ring like she always did. How's the boy? Mama, I haven't even said hello yet. You called at 11 on a weeknight. There's a boy. I pressed my forehead against the cool window, the city glowing below. His family doesn't like me. Baby girl. Her voice was soft, certain. The right ones never come easy. Your grandfather's mama threw a shoe at me the first time I walked through her door. A shoe, Naomi? We were married 42 years. I smiled, thought of Shiwoo's hands around his coffee cup, his voice going quiet when he talked about that little boy with leukemia. He's gentle, Mama. He's so gentle. Then hold on to that. Gentlemen are rare, and the world tries to beat it out of them. 3 days later, he took me to the rooftop. The hospital had a door that technically wasn't supposed to be used. Shiwoo held it open with his hip, 2 cups of vending machine coffee in his hands. Don't judge the coffee, judge the view. I stepped out and stopped. Manhattan stretched in every direction, lit up like the whole city was showing off. The wind caught my hair. Below us, ambulances crawled and taxis honked and 8 million people lived their lives without looking up. But up here, it was quiet. Just us and the skyline and the hum of the building beneath our feet. I come up here after hard shifts, he said, handing me a cup. When I lose one, when I can't fix it, I come up here and just breathe. He'd lost a patient 2 days ago. I could see it in the shadows under his eyes, the way his hands weren't quite steady. He hadn't told me, but I knew. I'd spent my career reading the weight people carry in their bodies. You don't have to be okay, Shiwoo. I know. I mean it. You don't have to perform fine for me. He looked at me. Something shifted in his face, a crack in the composure he wore like a uniform. She was 7, brain tumor. I held her hand every day for 3 weeks. His voice broke on the last word. Her name was Sophie. She liked butterflies. I didn't say I was sorry. I didn't say it would be okay. I set my coffee down and put my arms around him. He stiffened for 1 second, then folded into me, his face against my shoulder, his breath ragged. I held him on that rooftop while the city blazed below us, and I understood something about Yoon Si-woo that his family would never see. His softness wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing about him. He pulled back after a while, wiped his eyes, tried to laugh. Sorry, great second date. Best one I've ever had. He looked at me like he was trying to figure out how I was real. I was falling. I knew it the way you know weather is coming. A shift in the air, a change in pressure. Something building that you can't stop and don't want to. The second family dinner came 3 weeks later. Si-woo had been quiet about it all day. When he finally told me, his jaw was tight. Yoonbi called. There's a family gathering Saturday, she said. He paused. She said it's family only. I'm not family. You're with me. That makes you family. I told him I didn't want to cause trouble. He told me he didn't care. We went. The Yoon house was full when we arrived. Aunties I hadn't met. Cousins. The Korean church women with their sharp eyes and sharper whispers. I felt every gaze land on me and stay. Yoonbi met us at the door. She didn't look at me. Spoke directly to Si-woo in Korean, fast and clipped. He answered in English. Naomi is with me. She stays. Yoonbi's eyes flickered to mine, cold, assessing. Fine. Fine said in a voice that meant anything but. The living room was crowded. Conversations in Korean flowed around me like a river I was standing in the middle of. Smiles aimed my way between sentences that weren't meant for me. I caught tone. I caught body language. The sideways glances. The way Mrs. Yoon's friends looked at me, then at each other, with that specific expression people make when they're sharing a judgment without speaking. Si-woo stayed close. His hand found the small of my back. I leaned into it. That's when I saw him. A boy, sitting alone in the corner of the living room, apart from the chaos. 5 years old, small for his age, with dark eyes that stared at nothing. Everyone moved around him like he was furniture. Adults talked about him in hushed voices, pointing, shaking their heads. That's Junho, Si-woo said quietly. Yoonbi's son. He hasn't spoken in 8 months. My breath caught. Not visibly, not in any way anyone would notice. But inside me, something woke up. The professional, the specialist, the woman who had been that silent child once. What happened? Nobody really knows. One day he just stopped. I knew. Not the specifics, not yet, but I knew the pattern. I'd spent 15 years studying it, and I could see it in the way Junho held himself. Shoulders curved inward, eyes unfocused, a stuffed animal pressed against his chest with his left hand. Always his left hand, always pressed tight. I excused myself from Si-woo's side, crossed the room, and I sat on the floor. Not next to Junho, not in his space, just near him, close enough to be present, far enough to be safe. I didn't speak, didn't look at him directly. I just sat there, cross-legged, hands open in my lap, breathing. The room hummed around us. Adults talked, dishes clinked, someone laughed. Junho didn't move. 5 minutes, 7 minutes. At 10 minutes, he turned his head, just slightly. His eyes found mine. Eye contact. The first he'd made with a non-family member in months. I didn't react, didn't smile, didn't reach for him. I just held his gaze, steady and warm, the way Mama Ruth held mine all those years ago when I was the silent child on the porch. He looked away, pressed the stuffed animal tighter. But something had shifted, something microscopic and enormous at the same time. Nobody noticed. The room was too busy being a room. But across the space, near the kitchen door, Si-woo was watching. His eyes moved from Junho to me and back. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Later, Eunbi cornered me in the hallway. I don't know what you think you're doing with my brother-in-law. Her voice was low, controlled, the kind of anger that dresses itself up as concern. But he has a future, a family, people who actually care about him. I care about him. You're dragging him down even further. A nurse, dating a... She stopped herself, smiled that porcelain smile. You're not fit to be around our family. I held her gaze, Let the words land, let them bruise. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said. I walked away with my back straight and Mama Ruth's voice steady in my chest. Never let them see you bleed. The following Sunday, Mrs. Yoon outdid herself. I arrived at the family dinner to find an extra guest. A young Korean woman, mid-20s, beautiful, seated directly next to Shiwoo. Mrs. Yoon was all smiles, making introductions. Shiwoo, you remember Hyejin, Dr. Choi's daughter? She just finished her residency, pediatric surgery. She emphasized the word surgery like it was a cure for whatever disease she thought I was. I thought you two should reconnect. Hyejin had the good grace to look uncomfortable. Shiwoo's face went blank. That specific kind of blank that means fury held on a leash. Iyama. His voice was quiet. Naomi is right here. Oh. Mrs. Yoon turned to me with a smile that could cut glass. Of course. Naomi, sit anywhere. Anywhere meant not next to him. I sat across the table, ate the food, smiled when addressed, watched Hyejin lean toward Shiwoo and say something about a conference, watched Mrs. Yoon's eyes gleam with satisfaction, watched Shiwoo angle his body away from Hyejin and toward me like a compass finding north. Under the table, his foot found mine, pressed against it, stayed. I pressed back. Mrs. Yoon could arrange all the Korean girls she wanted. She couldn't arrange his heart. Halfway through dinner, the conversation turned to Junho. Yoonbi's face tightened. She'd been drinking wine. We've tried 4 specialists. 4. The last one charged $800 an hour and Junho wouldn't even look at her. Mrs. Yoon set down her chopsticks. We need Doctor Ellis. Everything in me went still. Dr. Ellis, Mrs. Yoon continued, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. The leading specialist in the country, maybe the world, published 2 books. Her waitlist is 18 months and she won't take new patients. I picked up my water glass, drank, set it down. My hand did not shake. I've called her clinic 4 times, Yoonbi said. 4 times. They won't even put me on the waitlist. Apparently, she reviews every case personally. I do. I review every case personally. I had probably seen Yoonbi's name in the rejection pile and never connected it to this family, this table, this boy pressing a stuffed animal to his chest in the other room. Money isn't the issue, Mr. Yoon said, his first words of the evening. We'll pay whatever it takes. Money was never the issue. It never was, with families like this. They threw checks at the problem like currency could unlock a child's voice. It couldn't. I knew that better than anyone alive. Mrs. Yoon sighed. If only we knew someone who could get us in. I sat 3 feet from the answer, eating her food, being ignored by her guests. The woman she wanted to throw out of her son's life was the only person on earth who could help her grandson. I said nothing. Not yet. It wasn't time. But something burned in me. Not anger, something older. The memory of being 6 years old and voiceless, sitting on a porch in Memphis while the world moved around me like I wasn't there. The fierce, patient love of a grandmother who sat with me until I was ready. Junho was in the next room, silent, alone, clutching that stuffed animal. I recognized the behavior now, had studied it for years. The toy was a self-soothing anchor, connected to whatever trauma locked his voice away. The way he held it, left hand, pressed to the center of his chest, told me the trauma was sudden, not gradual. Something happened, one event, and the words stopped. I almost said something to Eunbi. Almost. My professional instinct screamed at me. This child needs help. You can help him right now. But this wasn't the time. Not here, not like this. Not while they saw me as nothing. I excused myself from the table. Found Junho in the living room. Sat on the floor again. He was already looking at me when I sat down, like he'd been waiting. I pulled a piece of paper from my purse, folded it slowly, deliberately, into a crane, set it on the floor between us. Junho stared at it. His fingers loosened on the stuffed animal, just slightly. He reached out with his right hand, the free one, and touched the crane's wing. My heart cracked open. That night the phone rang at 11:45. Shiwoo. I'm sorry about Hyejin. I had no idea my mother would... I know. She had no right. She had every right in her mind. I'm the problem, remember? Silence. Then, you're not the problem, Naomi. You're the only thing in my life that makes sense. I closed my eyes. Let that settle into me. Tell me about Jun-ho, I said. He exhaled. I could hear the helplessness in it. He was a normal kid, loud, funny, talked nonstop. Then 8 months ago, he just went silent. Yoonbi and Jaemin were having problems. Fighting. Bad fights. I think... He paused. I think Junho heard something he shouldn't have. My stomach tightened. There it was. The trauma. The screaming match. The child hiding behind a door, absorbing violence through the walls. Does he respond to music? I asked. What? Music? Does he react? Turn toward it? Pull away? I think he hums sometimes, when he thinks no one's listening. How did you know to ask that? Does he draw? Does he use his hands for anything other than holding that stuffed animal? He folds things, napkins, paper. Naomi, how do you know these questions? I work with children, Shiwoo. You pick things up. He accepted that. Why wouldn't he? I was a woman who worked with kids. The questions made sense on the surface. He couldn't see the depth beneath them, the 15 years of research, the 2 books, the hundreds of cases that taught me exactly what to ask and when. I feel helpless, he whispered. He's 5. He's my nephew. And I can't do anything. You can be there. You can sit with him. You can let him know he's not alone. That's what you do on that floor. You just sit with him. It's more than most people offer. He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was thick. You're different, Naomi. You know that? I knew, just not in the way he meant. The weeks blurred together in a pattern of warmth and cruelty, stitched side by side. Shiwoo took me to a Korean barbecue place in Flushing where the owner knew his name and the meat was perfect. I taught him how Mama Ruth makes cornbread in a cast iron skillet, no sugar, because sugar in cornbread is a crime against the South. He laughed so hard he burned the first batch. At the hospital, we fell into a rhythm. Coffee on the rooftop before his shifts. He'd bring me the terrible vending machine stuff, and I'd pretend to hate it and drink every drop. He started leaving notes on my car. Stupid, sweet things. Your laugh is my favorite sound. Marcus built a tower today and asked where you were? He made me feel seen. Not Dr. Ellis, not the published expert, not the woman with the 18-month waitlist. Just Naomi, the girl from Memphis who sat on floors and folded paper cranes and kept her power quiet because she needed to know someone loved her for what they could see, not what was hidden. One afternoon, he showed up at my clinic to pick me up for dinner. I watched him walk through the door, past the sign that read Dr. Ellis, specialist in childhood communication disorders. He glanced at it, glanced at me. Your boss has a nice setup? I almost choked. My boss? Dr. Ellis, this clinic is beautiful. The sensory room, the play therapy area. Whoever designed this understands kids. I designed it. Every room, every color, every toy placed with intention. I'll pass along the compliment, I said. He never connected it. Why would he? Naomi, his girlfriend who worked with children, and Dr. Ellis, the world-renowned specialist, existed in separate categories in his mind. The thought that they were the same person never crossed it. At church the following Sunday, Shiwoo took me to meet his community. The Korean Presbyterian Church on 37th Street. A beautiful building. Warm light. Cold reception. The whispers started before we reached the door. I could feel them. Not hear the words, but feel the vibration of judgment moving through the crowd like a current. Heads turning. Conversations pausing. Eyes landing on our joined hands and staying there like something was wrong with the picture. An older woman approached Mrs. Yoon, said something in Korean. Mrs. Yoon's response was quiet, clipped, accompanied by a glance in my direction that lasted exactly long enough to communicate everything. Don't worry about them, Shiwoo said, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand tightened around mine. He was fighting a war on 2 fronts, loving me and losing his community, And I could see the cost. Park Jaemin found Shiwoo outside after the service. I watched from across the parking lot as Jaemin leaned close, finger jabbing toward Shiwoo's chest. I can't hear them, I told myself, but I could read bodies. Jaemin's posture was aggressive, dominant. Shiwoo's was rigid, not backing down, but absorbing. Shiwoo told me later what his brother-in-law said. "Stop embarrassing the family. Your mother cries every night. Your father won't talk about you." "Is she worth all of this?" He'd answered, "Yes." And that one word, yes, told me everything I needed to know about who Yoon Shiwoo was becoming. The next family visit, Junho followed me. I was in the kitchen, helping clear plates because I refused to sit idle while Yoonbi's passive-aggressive hospitality tried to make me feel like a guest who'd overstayed. I turned around, and there he was, standing in the doorway, stuffed animal in his left hand, eyes on me. I didn't react, kept moving, washed a dish, dried it. He took 2 steps into the kitchen. I folded a napkin into a small boat, set it on the counter without looking at him. He took 3 more steps, picked up the boat, held it next to his stuffed animal. For the rest of the evening, wherever I went, Junho followed. Living room, hallway, back to the kitchen. Silent, present, choosing me with his feet because his voice couldn't do it yet. Nobody noticed. The family was too busy being a family, too busy talking about Junho's silence and throwing money at specialists and mentioning Dr. Ellis's name like a prayer. Too busy ignoring the quiet revolution happening under their roof. Shiwoo noticed. He always noticed. "He follows you," he said that night, driving me home. "He doesn't follow anyone else. Kids are smart. They know who's safe." He looked at me. That look, the sunset look, like I was something he couldn't quite believe existed. "I know you're safe too," he said. A Thursday evening, late, the hospital was quiet, the halls dim, the day shift gone home. I'd stayed late finishing notes. Shiwoo had stayed late because a patient's mother needed someone to sit with her while her daughter was in surgery. We met on the rooftop, our rooftop. The city hummed below, indifferent and enormous. "Long day," he said. "Long day." We stood side by side, close. His arm brushed mine. Neither of us moved away. "Thank you," he said, "for not running. My family, the church people, Yoonbi, all of it. Most people would have left by now." "I'm not most people." "No." He turned to face me. The city lights caught his eyes. "You're not." The air changed. I felt it the way you feel a storm gathering, a thickening, a warmth. His hand came up, slow, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His fingertips grazed my cheek. Stayed. Naomi. My name in his mouth. Quiet. Like a question and an answer at the same time. I looked at his lips. He looked at mine. The space between us shrank to nothing. I could feel his breath, see the question in his eyes. My hand found his chest. His heart was hammering beneath my palm. His phone rang. The sound shattered the moment like glass. He flinched, pulled back, looked at the screen. My mother. Of course it was her. He silenced it, looked back at me. The moment was gone. We both knew it. That specific electricity you can't manufacture twice. Not in the same night. "Shiwoo." "Yeah." "Next time," I said. "Turn the phone off." He laughed. Quiet. Real. The kind that settles into the space between 2 people and stays. He drove me home, walked me to my door, stood there for a moment, both of us teetering on the edge of something we both wanted, and neither of us had touched yet. "Good night, Naomi." "Good night, Shiwoo." He turned, took 3 steps, stopped, turned back. "For the record," he said, "I was going to kiss you." "I know. And I'm going to. Soon." I leaned against my doorframe. Let him see me smile. "I know that too." He walked away grinning. I closed the door, pressed my back against it, stood there in the dark of my apartment with my hand over my heart, feeling it race. Somewhere across the city, a 5-year-old boy was sleeping with a paper crane tucked next to his stuffed animal. Somewhere, a mother was dialing her son's phone to remind him where he belonged. And somewhere in Memphis, Mama Ruth was rocking on her porch, knowing, the way grandmothers know, that something good was building in her granddaughter's life. something good, and something that was about to get much, much harder. He turned his phone off before we reached the rooftop. I noticed. He saw me notice. Neither of us said a word about it. Thursday night, late October. The city was cold enough to see your breath, but neither of us suggested going inside. We stood at the railing, shoulder to shoulder, Manhattan glittering below like it was putting on a show just for us. He'd lost another one. I could see it in the way he held himself. Shoulders curled in, jaw locked. That heaviness behind his eyes that I'd learned to read over the last 2 months. "Tell me," I said. "Marcus." I went still. "Not your Marcus. Different kid, same name. 4 years old, cardiac." He stared at the skyline. I was with him every shift for 6 weeks. He called me Woo. Couldn't say the whole name. His voice cracked. "He died at 3:47 this morning." I was holding his hand. I didn't say I was sorry. Sorry is a word people throw when they don't know what else to offer, and it bounces off grief like a stone off water. I took his hand, laced my fingers through his. Let the silence hold us. "You know what kills me?" he whispered. His parents thanked me. They said I made it easier, that their son was less scared because of me. And I thought. He stopped, breathed. My father would say that's not real medicine, that holding a dying child's hand is not the same as saving one. "Your father is wrong." He looked at me, eyes wet. The wind pushed hair across his forehead, and I reached up and brushed it back, my fingers trailing along his temple, his cheek, the line of his jaw. He leaned into my hand. "How do you do that?" he said. "Do what?" "Make me feel like I'm enough, just as I am." My heart cracked open. Right there on that rooftop, in the cold, with the city screaming below, and this quiet, gentle man looking at me like I held the answer to something he'd been asking his whole life. "Because you are," I said. "You are enough." He kissed me, not slow, not tentative. He kissed me like he'd been holding his breath for months and finally let himself breathe. His hands found my face, both of them, cradling me like I was something precious and fragile in his, and I kissed him back with everything I had. Every lonely night, every paper crane I folded, every time I sat on a floor and waited for a child to trust me. All of it poured into this moment on this rooftop with this man. The city disappeared. The cold disappeared. There was only his mouth against mine, warm and urgent and certain, and the sound of my own heart, loud, alive, choosing him. When we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine. We were both breathing hard. "I should have done that weeks ago," he said. "You should have done that the first day in that doorway." He laughed, that quiet, real laugh, the one that made me fall in the first place. "Naomi." "Yeah? This is real. You know that, right?" I looked at him, the city lights in his eyes, the steadiness in his voice, the way his hands hadn't left my face. "Yeah," I said. "I know." He drove me home, walked me to my door, kissed me again, slower this time, softer, like the first one was a declaration and this one was a promise. "Good night," he said. "Good night, Shiwoo." I closed the door, pressed my back against it, smiled in the dark. This was real. The phone call from Yoonbi came 4 days later, not to me, to Shiwoo. But I was sitting next to him on his couch, my legs across his lap, reading patient files while he scrolled through his phone. I heard every word. "She was at our rooftop party. People saw. People are talking, Shiwoo. You were kissing her in public like some kind of what, Yoonbi? You know what I mean?" "Say it." Silence. Then, "She's not one of us. She's not fit for this family, and the longer you pretend she is, the more damage you do." He hung up, set the phone down. His jaw was tight enough to cut glass. "I heard," I said. "I know." "It's going to get worse." He looked at me, took my hand, pressed his lips to my knuckles. "I don't care." But I could see it in him. The fault line between the man he wanted to be and the son he'd been raised to be. Every attack widened it. And I could feel the earthquake coming. I took him to Memphis the following weekend. Not as a statement, not as a grand romantic gesture. I took him because I needed him to see where I came from. The roots that held me up when people tried to cut me down. Mama Ruth was on the porch when we pulled up. Rocking chair, sweet tea. October in Memphis, warm enough for the porch, cool enough for a sweater. She watched us walk up the path, her eyes on Shaiwu the way a jeweler examines a stone. "Mama, this is Shaiwu." He bowed slightly, polite, nervous. "It's an honor, Mrs. Ellis." "Boy, if you call me Mrs. Ellis, I'm going to make you sleep in the yard." She stood, all 5'2" of her, hugged him. He hugged back, surprised. "Call me Mama. Everyone does." She held him at arm's length, studied his face, then she looked at me. "That boy looks at you like you hung the moon." Shirwu turned crimson. "Come inside. I made gumbo, and I expect you to eat 3 bowls." He ate 4. I watched him in Mama Ruth's kitchen, learning how to stir a roux, sleeves rolled up, laughing at Auntie Jackie's stories about my childhood. Cousin Tasha cornered him on the porch and grilled him for 20 minutes. He answered every question honestly. Tasha gave me a thumbs up through the window. He fit. In this house, with these people, in this warmth, he fit in a way he never fit in his own family's dining room. And I could see him realizing it. The softness in his eyes when Mama Ruth patted his cheek. The way he laughed without checking if anyone was watching. The way he breathed. That evening, we walked the streets, past the barbecue joints and the music spilling from doorways, past the church where Mama Ruth sang every Sunday, past the school where 6-year-old Naomi Ellis finally opened her mouth and spoke for the first time. "There," I pointed, "second grade classroom, that window." He stopped, looked at me. "I didn't speak until I was 6, Shiwu, not a word. Selective mutism. Same thing Junho has." I'd never told him. It wasn't something I shared easily. It lived in a deep place, a place where the silent girl still sat sometimes, waiting to feel safe enough to try. His face changed. Not pity, never pity, understanding. "That's why you're so good with him," he said. "That's why you sit on the floor." Because someone sat with me, Mama Ruth, every day for years. She never pushed, never forced. She just waited. He pulled me close, wrapped his arms around me on a Memphis sidewalk while the evening hummed. "I love you," he said. The words settled into me like rain into dry earth. I'd been waiting my whole life for someone to say that, and mean it. To say it knowing where I came from, knowing the silent girl, knowing the grandmother's kitchen and the small house and the roots that went deep and held everything together. "I love you too," I said. He held me tighter. I let him. The silent girl inside me smiled. Yunbi found out 2 weeks later. I don't know how. Maybe Shiwu mentioned Memphis. Maybe she heard something through the family chain. Maybe she dug. Yunbi was the type who dug. The family dinner that Sunday was tense before I even walked in. I could feel it in the air. Mrs. Yoon's smile was colder than usual. Yunbi wouldn't look at me. Junho was in his corner, silent, clutching his stuffed animal. I wanted to go to him, but the room felt like a trap. Yunbi waited until dessert. "Shiwu, I heard the most interesting thing." Her voice was light, conversational, a knife wrapped in silk. "About Naomi." I set my fork down. "Apparently," Yunbi continued, looking around the table to make sure everyone was listening, "your girlfriend didn't speak until she was 6 years old. 6. Some kind of, what is it? Selective mutism?" The table went quiet. Yunbi turned to me. Her eyes were bright, victorious. "Is that true?" I felt every eye in the room land on me. Mrs. Yoon, Mr. Yoon, the golden brother, Jae-min, all of them watching, waiting. "Yes," I said. "It's true." "So let me understand." Yunbi leaned forward. "You didn't even talk until you were 6 years old, and you think you're qualified to be around our family? Around my son?" She glanced at Junho's empty space. He'd been moved to another room. "She's broken herself. She was a broken child, and now she's dragging my brother-in-law down to her level." The words hit like fists. Broken. She called me broken. Shiwoo's chair scraped back. Yoonbi, that's enough. Is it? Because someone needs to say what we're all thinking. Yoonbi's voice rose. She's not one of us. She never will be. And this, she gestured between me and Shiwoo. This needs to stop before it goes any further. Mrs. Yoon said nothing. Her silence was agreement. Mr. Yoon sipped his tea. His silence was permission. Dr. Shi-hyun studied his plate. His silence was cowardice. The whole family, united in the belief that I was broken. Less than, not enough. I stood up, slowly, set my napkin on the table. Thank you for dinner, I said. I walked out of that house with my back straight and my chin up and my grandmother's voice in my chest like a drumbeat. Never let them see you bleed. In the car, I didn't cry. I wouldn't give them that. But my hands shook the entire drive home. She called me broken, the woman whose son I could heal, whose son I was the only person on earth who could heal. She called me broken, and the whole table sat there and let her. My phone buzzed. Shiwoo. I let it ring. It buzzed again and again. I turned it off. In the silence of my apartment, I sat on the floor, knees to my chest, back against the wall, the same position I taught children to use when the world got too loud. I was not broken. I was the thing that grew from the breaking. But sitting there in the dark for the first time since this started, I wasn't sure that was enough. The ultimatum came on a Tuesday. Not at a dinner, not dressed in formality. Mrs. Yoon showed up at Shiwoo's apartment. I know because he told me later, his voice hollow, like the words were coming from somewhere far away. She stood in his doorway, didn't sit, didn't soften. You will end this, today, or you are no longer part of this family. He tried to reason with her, told her Naomi was a good person, told her she didn't understand. I understand perfectly, she said. You chose a nurse's life instead of a doctor's. You chose to disappoint us at every turn. And now you've chosen a woman who couldn't even speak as a child. A broken woman, Shiwoo. She used that word, broken. Yoonbi's word. The family had passed it around like a verdict. Your father agrees, your brother agrees, Yoonbi agrees. If you continue, you lose everything, your family, your inheritance, your name in this community. She left. And Shiwoo, the gentlest man I'd ever known, did what gentle people do when the pressure becomes too much. He went silent. He called me that evening. His voice was flat, empty, a voice I recognized because I'd heard it in hundreds of children who had been crushed by the people who were supposed to protect them. I think we need to stop, Naomi. My hand tightened around the phone. Stop what? This, us. I can't. He trailed off. I can't keep hurting everyone. You're not hurting anyone, they're hurting you. Maybe, but I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. He hung up. I stood in my apartment holding a dead phone. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I flew to Memphis the next morning. Mama Ruth was on the porch, same chair, same tea. She took one look at my face and didn't ask a single question. She just opened her arms. I sat on that porch for 3 days, didn't work, didn't check my email, let Auntie Jackie feed me and Cousin Tasha sit beside me in the evenings, quiet, steady, present. On the third night, Mama Ruth rocked in her chair and finally spoke. That boy didn't stop loving you, baby girl. A man who stops loving you doesn't sound like that on a phone. That's a man who got told his love is wrong so many times he believed it. What do I do? Same thing I did with you when you were 6. You sit, you wait, you leave the door open, and you trust that the people who love you will find their voice. I closed my eyes, felt the Memphis air on my skin, thought about a 5-year-old boy with a stuffed animal pressed to his chest, trusting me with his silence, thought about a man on a rooftop who turned off his phone to kiss me. I waited. 2 weeks passed. I went back to New York, back to my clinic, back to patients who needed me. The work steadied me the way it always did. Every child I sat with on a floor reminded me why I chose this life. Shiwoo didn't call. I didn't call him. The door was open. He knew where it was. Then my receptionist called me on a Friday afternoon. Dr. Ellis, we have an emergency referral. A 5-year-old boy, complete shutdown at his school this morning. Won't move, won't respond, won't look at anyone. The school is demanding professional intervention or he can't return. My stomach dropped. Name? Park Jun-ho. His mother is… Papers rustled. Yoon Eunbi. I sat down, my hands pressed flat on my desk. The room tilted for 1 second, then steadied. Schedule them for this afternoon. Clear my last 2 appointments. Dr. Ellis, your policy is to review all… I know my policy. Schedule it. Now. I stood at my office window. Manhattan stretched below. Somewhere in the city, a boy who trusted me was locked inside himself. Somewhere his mother was frantic. And somewhere, a man I loved was drowning in silence. I had 3 hours to prepare. I spent them the way I spent everything, with patience, with precision, and with the fierce, quiet certainty that Mama Ruth planted in me 30 years ago on a Memphis porch. The buzzer rang at 4:15. My receptionist's voice, calm and professional. Dr. Ellis, your 4:30 is here, Park Jun-ho and his mother. Send them in. I heard them before I saw them. Yoonbi's heels on the hallway floor, fast, frantic, a child's shuffling steps beside her. The door opened. Yoonbi stood in the frame, Jun-ho beside her, small and still, eyes unfocused, the stuffed animal crushed against his chest. Behind them, in the hallway, Mrs. Yoon. She'd come. Of course she'd come. And behind Mrs. Yoon, pressed against the wall like he'd followed them without being invited, Shi-woo. Our eyes met. 1 second. An entire conversation in a glance. Yoonbi looked past me, scanning the room for the doctor. Where is Dr. Ellis? We have an appointment. My son needs help. I stepped forward. I am Dr. Ellis. 3 words. The room stopped. Yoonbi's face went blank, then confused. Then something cracked behind her eyes as the truth reassembled itself in the real time. That's… No, you're Shi-woo's… She couldn't finish. I'm Dr. Naomi Ellis. This is my clinic. Jun-ho was referred to me this afternoon. I've been expecting you. Yoonbi's mouth opened, closed. She looked at the diplomas on the wall. Columbia, Vanderbilt, the 2 book covers framed beside them. Dr. N. Ellis. You… Her voice was barely there. You were at our dinners? Yes. You sat at our table. My mother-in-law said we needed Dr. Ellis. She said it right in front of you. Yes. And you didn't say anything? I looked at her, held her gaze. Would you have believed me? She had no answer. I knelt in front of Jun-ho. He was deep inside himself, eyes vacant, body rigid. The shutdown was severe. I'd seen it before, hundreds of times, but never with a child whose floor I'd sat on, whose paper cranes I'd folded, whose eyes I'd met across a crowded room full of people who didn't see either of us. Hey, Jun-ho. My voice was soft, level, the same voice I used on Mama Ruth's porch when I was learning how to come back to the world. It's Nomi. Behind me, Dr. Shi-hyun pushed into the room. I hadn't seen him arrive. His surgeon's authority filled the space. Let me help. I'm a doctor. Jun-ho, look at your uncle. Jun-ho flinched. His body curled tighter. The stuffed animal pressed harder against his chest. Step back, I said. Not harsh, firm. Please. Shi-hyun hesitated. This was a man who saved lives with his hands, who commanded operating rooms, who had never been told to step back in his life. Step back, I said again. You're scaring him. He stepped back. I turned to Jun-ho, pulled the stuffed animal from my bag. Not his. A matching one. Identical. I'd ordered it the day I first noticed his weeks ago, because I understood what it meant. It was his anchor, his bridge back. I set the matching animal on the floor between us. Jun-ho's eyes moved, slowly, down to the floor, to the animal. Something flickered. Recognition. A crack in the wall. I sat on the floor, cross-legged, hands open, just like the first time. The room behind me was silent, Yoonbi holding her breath, Mrs. Yoon somewhere in the hallway, Shi-hyun frozen, Shi-woo watching through the doorway. Minutes passed. I didn't speak, didn't push. I sat with him the way Mama Ruth sat with me. The way I'd sat with him at every family dinner while the adults talked about him like he wasn't there. Junho's fingers loosened on his stuffed animal, just slightly. His right hand moved, reached for the matching one on the floor, touched it, pulled it close. His eyes found mine, and then, for the first time in 8 months, Junho opened his mouth. Nomi. One word, barely a whisper, but it cracked the room in half. Yunbi's legs gave out. She collapsed into the chair behind her, hands over her face, sobbing. Not quiet, dignified tears. The kind of crying that comes from a place so deep it doesn't have a name. Relief and shame and gratitude and grief, all of it pouring out at once. Her son's first word in 8 months was the name of the woman she'd called broken. The woman she said wasn't fit to be around her family. The woman she tried to destroy. In the hallway, Mrs. Yoon slid down the wall. Her knees buckled and she sat on the floor. The same floor I'd been choosing since the first day I walked into her house. She pressed her hand over her mouth. Her shoulders shook. The woman who said I was nothing was sitting on the floor because the weight of her mistake was too heavy to stand under. Dr. Shi-hyun stood in the corner, hands at his sides. The surgeon, the golden child, the man whose hands could save lives on an operating table but couldn't make a 5-year-old boy say a single word. Naomi could, the woman with the simpler tastes, the broken one. I didn't look at any of them. I stayed on the floor with Junho. His small hand reached for mine. I took it, held it, let him squeeze. "Hi, Junho," I whispered. "I've been waiting for you." Then Shiwoo stepped into the room. He looked at his mother on the floor, at his brother frozen in the corner, at Yunbi sobbing in the chair, at me, cross-legged, holding his nephew's hand. He turned to his family. His voice was quiet, steady, the voice of a man who had been silent his whole life and was done. "You spent my whole life telling me I wasn't enough, not successful enough, not ambitious enough, not the right kind of son." He looked at his father, who had appeared in the hallway behind Mrs. Yoon. "You compared me to Shi-hyun every chance you got. You told me nursing wasn't real medicine. You told me my compassion was weakness." He paused. The room held its breath. "But I chose a career where I help children. I chose a woman who heals them. And I will choose both every single day over your approval." His eyes found mine, warm, certain, the same eyes that watched me from a hospital doorway months ago. "I'm done asking for it." 2 silent people found their voices on the same day. A 5-year-old boy who said a name. A grown man who finally said enough. I held Junho's hand. Shiwoo crossed the room and knelt beside me. His hand found my shoulder. Stayed. Junho looked at him, then at me. Then he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against the stuffed animal. Both of them now, the old one and the new one, held together in his small arms. Yunbi's sobs were the only sound. And in the hallway on the floor, Mrs. Yoon whispered something in Korean that I didn't need to understand. The tone said everything. She was sorry. 3 weeks later, Junho said his second word. More. He was sitting on the floor of my clinic, the 2 stuffed animals propped beside him, building a tower out of blocks. I'd set a juice box just out of reach. He looked at it, looked at me, and said it. More. I gave him the juice. And I cried. Not in front of him, never in front of him. I waited until he was in the waiting room with Yunbi, and then I sat at my desk and let the tears come. Because more meant he was reaching. He was asking. The locked door inside him was opening, and he was choosing to walk through it. Shiwoo found me like that. He'd started coming to the clinic after his shifts, sitting in the corner of my office, reading, waiting, just being present. The way I was present for Junho. The way Mama Ruth was present for me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He pulled his chair beside mine, put his arm around me, and waited until I was ready. He said, "More," I whispered. Shiwoo kissed my temple. "That's because of you. That's because of him I just held the door open." He smiled. That smile, the one that started in his eyes and worked its way down to a warmth that filled the whole room. I'd seen it in a hospital doorway months ago. I'd see it for the rest of my life. Junho's treatment continued twice a week. Yoonbi brought him every session. She sat in my waiting room with her hands in her lap and her eyes on the floor, and she waited. She never complained about the drive, never asked how long it would take, never once tried to tell me how to do my job. On the 4th session, she stopped me in the hallway. I don't know how to say this. Her voice was small, nothing like the woman who'd called me broken across a dining table. What I said to you, about being broken, about not being fit for our family. She swallowed hard. My son says your name every morning now. He asks for you. The woman I tried to run out of our lives is the only reason my son is coming back to me. I could have made her wait, could have let the silence sit and punish. Mama Ruth didn't raise me like that. He's a brave boy, I said. He gets that from his mother. Yoonbi's face crumpled. She nodded, couldn't speak, turned and walked back to the waiting room. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the beginning of something neither of us had a name for. Mrs. Yoon came to the clinic on a Wednesday morning. She didn't have an appointment. She sat in the waiting room for an hour before my receptionist told me she was there. I found her in the corner, her usual perfect posture softened into something I'd never seen, her hands clasped in her lap, her eyes uncertain. May I speak with you? She asked. I led her to my office, closed the door, sat across from her. She looked at the diplomas on the wall, the books, the photographs of children I'd helped, the degrees from Columbia and Vanderbilt that she'd never known existed. I sat at my own table, she said slowly, and I told my family we needed Dr. Ellis, that you were the only hope for my grandson. And you were right there. Her voice broke. You were right there, and I couldn't see you, because I didn't want to. I said nothing. Let her speak. I was cruel to you. I was wrong. About your worth. About my son's worth. She pressed her lips together. Shiwoo chose nursing because he has a heart like yours. I punished him for it. I punished you for showing me what I refused to see. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope, set it on my desk. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am asking... She met my eyes. For the first time I saw her. Not the armor, not the porcelain smile, just a grandmother who was terrified of losing her family. Teach me how to help him. Teach me how to sit with him the way you do. I opened the envelope. Inside was a drawing. Junho's, a stick figure with dark curly hair sitting on a floor next to a smaller stick figure. Above them, in wobbly 5-year-old handwriting, a single word, Nomi. Come back on Saturday, I said. I'll show you. She came back on Saturday, and every Saturday after that. Junho's first full sentence came 6 weeks after the reveal. Mrs. Yoon was in the therapy room, sitting on the floor the way I'd taught her, when Junho looked up from his blocks and said, Halmoni, Nomi is nice? 5 words. A complete sentence. The truth delivered by the purest voice in the room. Mrs. Yoon covered her mouth with both hands. Tears streamed down her face. She looked at me through the observation window. I looked back. Something passed between us that didn't need words. Something that sounded like the beginning of a different story. The wedding was small. Mama Ruth's garden in Memphis. Because where else would it be? October again. A full year since that first family dinner. The air warm enough for bare shoulders and cool enough for the shawl Mama Ruth draped over mine. You look like your grandfather's smile, she whispered, adjusting my veil. Beautiful and stubborn and absolutely certain. The chairs were mismatched. The flowers were from a market down the road. Cousin Tasha did my hair. Auntie Jackie managed the food and threatened to fight anyone who complained about the seating. Shiwoo stood at the end of a path lined with mason jars and fairy lights, and when he saw me, his face did the thing it always did. The thing it did in that hospital doorway. The thing it did on the rooftop. Like he'd found something he didn't know he'd been looking for. Mrs. Yoon sat in the second row. She held Mr. Yoon's hand. She wore a hanbok, deep blue, and when I walked past her, she bowed her head. Not a command, not formality. Respect. Yoonbi was there, Jaemin beside her, quieter than he'd ever been. Dr. Shihyun stood next to Shiwoo as his best man, because some things in families don't heal in a year, but they can start. The vows were simple. "I chose you on a rooftop," Shiwu said, "when you told me I was enough. I choose you today. I'll choose you tomorrow. I'll choose you when it's hard and when it's easy and when the world tells us we don't make sense." He squeezed my hands. "You make sense to me. That's all that matters." I smiled through tears. "You were the first person who saw me sitting on a floor with a child and understood what I was doing. You didn't ask me to explain it. You just watched, and then you loved me for exactly who I am." I took a breath. "Nobody ever did that before. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how much that meant." He kissed me. Mama Ruth cheered the loudest, and then the ring bearer walked down the aisle. Junho, 5 years old, a tiny suit, no stuffed animal in his hands because he didn't need it anymore. He carried a small pillow with 2 rings, and he walked with the careful, deliberate steps of a boy who was learning that the world could be safe again. He reached me, looked up, his dark eyes clear and bright and full of something that made every person in that garden hold their breath. "I love you, Auntie Nomi." 6 words, clear, certain, the voice of a child who had been silent and chose to speak, who had been locked inside himself and found the door, who had been surrounded by people who talked about him and never to him, until a woman sat on a floor and waited. I knelt down, took the rings, pulled him into my arms. "I love you too, Junho." Behind me, Mrs. Yoon was crying. Yoonbi was crying. Mama Ruth was crying. Shiwu was crying. Auntie Jackie was crying and pretending she wasn't. Everyone was crying. I held that boy and thought about a porch in Memphis, where a 6-year-old girl once sat in silence, waiting for the world to feel safe, about a grandmother who never gave up on her, about a man who saw her sitting on a floor and fell in love with the patience everyone else called weakness, about how the things that break you can become the things that heal someone else, if you let them. I stood. Shiwu took my hand. Junho grabbed the other. The 3 of us walked back down that aisle together, the guests standing, the fairy lights glowing, Memphis humming around us like a song that had been playing all along, waiting for us to hear it. Some stories end with justice, some end with revenge, some end with a $1 million reveal and a villain on their knees. Mine ended with a boy who said my name, and that was more than enough.